if I could call the Metropolitan Planning Commission of Nashville to open, and we'll get started. I appreciate everybody coming down, and we'll call the meeting to order. So the first is, Commissioners, is the adoption of the agenda, which was sent out prior to the meeting. We'll need a motion to adopt.
So moved.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any edits or discussion? Additions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it, and the March 24th, 2022 agenda is adopted. Next is the approval of the March 10th, 2022 minutes. Those were also released beforehand, and we'll need a motion to adopt. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it, and the minutes are adopted. And next is the recognition of the council members, and we do this just as y'all come in. And so I saw Council Lady Gamble first. You want to come on up? Welcome.
Let's see. Thank you so much. And again, it's great to see you all today in person and without my mask for the first time. So I'll go on. I will be speaking briefly about number 21 on your agenda, the Mulberry Downs Townhome SP request. We have had at least 3.
Council Lady, it's number 21.
Yes.
Yep.
21, yes. I thought that's what I said, yes. The 2022 SP 1014-001. This project, we've been discussing this project in the community for several months. We've had about 3 community meetings about this particular project to build 149, it says multifamily units, but townhomes, single-family homes for sale in this community. This community is kind of on the urban-suburban transitional area, and there is a need for quality housing, and this townhome development would provide a diverse housing option that we currently do not have in this community. In the 3 community meetings that we've had regarding this development, there were concerns raised about preserving green space. There is woods in this area where we have quite a bit of wildlife, so there was concern about preserving as much green space as possible. Also, making sure that these homes would not be used for short-term rentals, so adding the NS designation to the SP was important, and then talking with NDOT and the developer, looking at ways to address traffic, because that is a concern that we have on that Dickerson Road corridor. Dickerson Road doesn't have sidewalks, and it is a dense corridor for traffic. So adding a right turn lane and a traffic light at the corner of Dickerson Road and Mulberry Downs Circle is another measure that we discuss adding to this project in order to make it the best that it could be towards enhancing the quality of life in the community. So for those reasons, I support the project. I think the developers have listened and heard our concerns, and working with NDOT, we've been able to put measures in place to address those concerns. So I ask for your support in this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. I appreciate you coming down. Next, I saw Council Lady Henderson. Do you want to go during the... Thank you, Council Lady. Good to see you. Are there any other council members? I want to make sure. I don't see any more. So before we start the items for deferral, just a couple of housekeeping items. As y'all know, spring has started, and it's put a smile on my face, I think. So I appreciate and the daylight savings time. So I know everyone else is probably noticing that. But before we start, too, if everybody could just make sure your phones are on silent, that's very helpful. That way we don't interrupt someone in the middle of a thought, and so appreciate everybody doing that. Masks are optional, so feel free to wear them if you so choose, and we appreciate everybody coming down. And so now we are on to item E, which is items for deferral withdrawal, and I think, Lisa, are you going to take care of that?
Yes.
I am. So the following items are for deferral or withdrawal. Starting on page 3 of your agenda, item number 1, 2021Z018TX001. Staff recommendation is to defer to the June 23rd Planning Commission meeting. Item 2A, 2022CP008001, North Nashville Community Plan Amendment. Staff recommendation is to defer to the April 14th Planning Commission meeting. On page 4 of your agenda, the associated case, item 2B, 2022 SP 013001, Second and Van Buren SP. Staff recommendation is to defer to the April 14th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. Item number 3, 2019 SP 007003, Sonia Drive Mixed Use Development Amendment. Staff recommendation is to defer to the April 14th Planning Commission meeting. Item number 4, 2021 SP 063001, Charlotte View West. Staff recommendation is to defer to the April 14th Planning Commission meeting. Item number 5, 2021 SP 081001, Oliveri Mixed Use. Staff recommendation is to defer to the April 14th Planning Commission meeting. Item number 6, 2021 SP 084001, Grace Park SP. Staff recommendation is to defer to the April 14th meeting. On page 5 of your agenda, item number 7, 2021 SP 091001, Pinhook Ridge. Staff recommendation is to defer to the May 26th Planning Commission meeting. Item 8A, 2022 SP 016001, Newsom Place. Staff recommendation is to defer to the April 14th meeting. The associated case 8B, 8485P005, Biltmore PUD cancellation. Staff recommendation is to defer to the April 14th meeting. Item 9A, 2022 HLI 001001, 518 Russell Street, Historic Landmarks Interior. Staff recommendation is to defer to the April 28th Planning Commission meeting. Item 9B, 2022 NL 001001, 518 Russell Street, Neighborhood Landmark. Staff recommendation is to defer to the April 28th, 2022 meeting. Item number 10, 2021Z114PR001, a rezoning on Crutcher Street. Staff recommendation is to defer to the April 14th Planning Commission meeting at the request of the Metro Planning staff in recognition of the ongoing work being done in the East Bank study. Staff anticipates a recommendation of approval of the rezoning. Item number 11, and that was to defer to the April 14th meeting. Item number 11, 2022Z019PR001, a rezoning on 16th Avenue North. Staff recommendation is to defer to the April 14th meeting. Item number 12, 2022Z031PR001, a rezoning on Murfreesboro Pike. Staff recommendation is to defer to the April 14th meeting. Item number 13, 2021 DTC 027001, 801 Monroe. Staff recommendation is to defer indefinitely. Item number 14, 2021 S227001, a re-subdivision plat for Lot 364, plan of DT McGavick. Staff recommendation is to defer indefinitely. On page 7 of your agenda, item number 15, 2022 S025001, Overstreet subdivision. Staff recommendation is to defer to the April 14th meeting. Item number 16, 2022 S043001, Cantor Chase Apartments reserve parcel. Staff recommendation is to defer indefinitely. Item number 17, 2022 S048001, 8392 Cub Creek Road. Staff recommendation is to defer to the April 14th Planning Commission meeting. On page 9 of your agenda, item number 24, 2022Z030PR001. Staff recommendation is to defer to the April 28th meeting.
Thank you, Lisa. And I think that our director needs to add a comment for the record.
Sure, thank you. For item number 10, as Ms. Milligan noted, this is a rezoning on Crutcher Street. The staff has recommended that the project be deferred, and the applicant has agreed. We do want to advise the commission that we would anticipate supporting a future rezoning. We think that the councilman who's here is supportive of a different use and a different rezoning, and I think the applicant requested that we enter that into the record. So thank you very much for agreeing to support the staff and the deferral.
Thank you, Director. I appreciate it. So, Commissioners, you've heard the items for deferral withdrawal. We'll go through these slowly to make sure that we have them all on the list. So, Lisa, make sure these are correct. So,
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
As you
Chairman.
get to items number 9 and A and B, it was listed as April 14th deferral, but Lisa said April 28th. I need clarification on those.
Okay, Lisa.
Certainly. So following publication of the original agenda, we had additional conversations between staff and the applicant on that case, and the council member also was involved. And we just have a bit more work that we need to do on that one in regards to some of the agreements that they need in order to make the neighborhood landmark work. And so they went ahead and decided that they wanted to go ahead and defer it to April 28th. And so instead of sort of tracking it for the next meeting and writing another deferral report, we had the opportunity to update the agenda now so that the community is aware that it is going to be pushed to April 28th.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa. Anything else, Chairman? Good. All right, so let's make sure these are the items for deferral withdrawal. Items 1, 2A, 2B, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8A, 8B, 9A, 9B, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 24. Is that correct?
It is correct. And one more note, I apologize, I meant to say this. Both of our meetings in April are located in a different location due to the Election Commission utilizing this room for early voting. And so for both the April 14th and April 28th meeting, which we have items that are being deferred to, those meetings will be held in the school board meeting room on Bransford Avenue.
Thank you. And we always post that as well, right, on our meeting notices? Okay. Thank you. Good reminder. All right, Commissioners, you've heard the items for deferral. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
There's a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. And we are now on the consent agenda. Lisa?
Items on the consent agenda will be voted on at a single time. No individual public hearing will be held, nor will the commission debate these items unless a member of the audience or the commission requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda. I'm going to go through the items that are indicated on the tentative consent agenda. I will read the case number and the case name and ask if there is anyone here in opposition of any of those items. If so, please raise your hand. I'll acknowledge, and then that item will be presented at the point when it comes up on the agenda. Okay. Starting with item 19A, 2021 CP 008003, North Nashville Community Plan Amendment, and the associated case 19B, 2021 SP 044001, Germantown Green. Is there anyone in here in opposition to 19A or B? Those will be on consent. Item number 20, 2021 SP 092001. I did want to note that this was an item that had previously been heard by the Planning Commission. The public hearing was held. The item was deferred to allow an opportunity for the applicant to speak with the neighboring property owner. They have been continuing those conversations. Certain agreements have been made. You have a memo in front of you, including an additional condition to add a fence. The conversations are continuing in regards to private agreements between the two for timing. But with that, we would present that item for consent. Is there anyone here in opposition to the item moving forward on consent?
That was item 20, right?
Yes, 20.
Item 20, anyone?
Okay.
Okay.
Item 21, 2022 SP 014001 Mulberry Downs. Is there anyone in opposition to item 21? Okay, 21 will stay on consent. Item 22, 2021 NL 003001 435 Old Hickory Boulevard Neighborhood Landmark. Is there anyone in opposition to item 22? Will stay on consent. Item 23 on page 9 of your agenda, 2022Z014PR001, rezoning on Cumberland Bend. Is there anyone in opposition to item 23? It will stay on consent. Item 25A, 2022Z035PR001, and the associated case 25B, 88P054001. Is there anyone in opposition to 25A or B? They will stay on consent. Item 26, 2022 DTC 011001 Miles, Nashville. Is there anyone here in opposition to item number 26? Stay on consent. Item 27, 2022 S017001 re-subdivision of lot of Doyle subdivision. Is there anyone in opposition to item 27? That item will stay on consent. Item 28, 2022 S042001 Rosebank subdivision re-subdivision of lot 29. Is there anyone here in opposition to item 28? Okay, Chair, I'm going to read through the items with the captions.
What about 2930 and the,
Oh, sorry, under other business, I'll just read those in.
perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry. Okay, as information for our audience, if you are not satisfied with the decision made by the Planning Commission today, you may appeal the decision by petitioning for a writ of cert with the Davidson County Chancery Court or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the entry of the Planning Commission's decision. To ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met, please be advised that you should contact independent legal counsel. The following items are on the consent agenda. Beginning on page 8 of your agenda, item number 19A, 2021 CP 008003 North Nashville Community Plan Amendment. It's a request to amend the North Nashville Community Plan by changing from district impact to mixed-use policy for property located on 3rd Avenue North. Staff recommendation is to approve. The associated case 19B, 2021 SP 044001 Germantown Green. It's a request to rezone from IR to SP for property located on 3rd Avenue North to permit 5 residential units. Staff recommendation is to approve with conditions and disapprove without all conditions. Item number 20, 2021 SP 092001 Dodson Chapel. It's a request to rezone from RS15 to SP and SP to SP zoning for property located on Dodson Chapel to permit 200 multifamily residential units. Staff recommendation is to approve with conditions and disapprove without all conditions, including the additional condition noted in the memo. Item number 21, 2022 SP 014001 Mulberry Downs. It's a request to rezone from RS 7.5 to SP for property located on Dickerson Pike unnumbered to permit 149 multifamily units. Staff recommendation is to approve with conditions and disapprove without all conditions. Item number 22, 2021 NL 003001 435 Old Hickory Boulevard. It's a request to apply a neighborhood landmark overlay to property located on Old Hickory Boulevard. Staff recommendation is to approve with conditions. On page 9 of your agenda, item number 23, 2022Z014PR001, a request to rezone from IWD to MUG for property located on Cumberland Bend. Staff recommendation is to approve. Item number 25A, 2022Z035PR001. It's a request to rezone from AR2A and R15 to RS10 for property located on Hamilton Church Road. Staff recommendation is to approve. The associated case 25B, 88P054001 South Shore PUD cancellation. It's a request to cancel a portion of a planned unit development for property located on Hamilton Church Road. Staff recommendation is to approve. Item number 26, 2022 DTC 011001 Miles, Nashville. It's a request for an overall height modification to allow a 19-story residential building. Staff recommendation is to approve with conditions. On page 10 of your agenda, item number 27, 2022S017001. It's a request for final plat approval to create 5 lots on property located on Kirkwood Avenue. Staff recommendation is to approve with conditions. Item number 28, 2022S042001, Rosebake Subdivision Resub of Lot 29. It's a request for final plat approval to create 2 lots on property located on Carter Avenue. Staff recommendation is to approve with conditions, including an exception to the compatibility requirements based on the lots being consistent with the larger area for general compatibility. Under other business, item H, item number 29, a new employment contract for Katie Kamezis. Item number 30, confirmation of Downtown Design Review Committee members. And item 34, to accept the director's report.
Thank you, Lisa. And so, Commissioners, you've heard the items on the consent agenda that we will approve all at once. And so we'll go through these items, and Lisa, make sure I get these correct as I list them out. Items 19A, 19B, 20, 21, 22, 23, 25A, 25B, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, and 34. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, Commissioners, you've heard the items to approve on the consent agenda all at once. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
All right, Chairman moves for approval, Vice Chair seconds. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it, and those items are adopted on the consent agenda. And so, for everyone, the only items that we will hear tonight is really one item 18A and 18B. And so everything else has been taken care of. And so we will consider that item next. But before we start, I know some folks are new, haven't been through the process. So the items to be considered on public hearing, the applicant goes first and gets 10 minutes, and then anyone wishing to speak in support gets 2 minutes. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition goes next, and then a rebuttal, and then the council member. And so I just want to kind of remind everybody of the process, and we really do appreciate everyone coming down. So item 18A for the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Sean Shepard with the planning staff. Before I begin, this project has been underway for quite some time, and sort of midway through our work on this effort, we had a new staff member join the department, Molly Pike, and she has been assisting me in continuing to work on and refine this tool. So we're going to present this together. I know normally you get a presentation from one planner, but you're going to get 2 staff on this, so I just want to let you know up front that was happening. So we'll kind of co-work through it. Additionally, we'll be presenting items 18A and B together, but you'll need to vote separately at the end. And so with that, we'll begin with item 18A. And I just want to remind the Commission before we dive in a little background. So the item on your agenda is titled Conservation Development, but we're really talking about a tool in our code that exists today called the cluster lot option. And we did a lot of education through our outreach on this process about what the current tool is and is not. And so just to refresh everyone's memory, it's a set of alternative zoning standards that can be utilized in the design of residential subdivisions when a concept plan comes before this body. It is only applicable when a property is currently zoned for single or 2-family residential, when the site is large enough to be divided into 10 or more lots that meet the minimum size of the existing zoning, and when that property is proposed to be subdivided into those individual lots. So something we had to kind of help all of our stakeholders remember is that these are not standards that permit or apply to multifamily or non-residential uses or mixed use. And there's not a zone change involved when this tool in its current form comes before you. It's part of your subdivision consideration. So just wanted to put that back on everyone's minds as we begin. So as a reminder, the commission directed staff in kind of late 2020 to evaluate the current cluster lot option tool and try to determine if it was yielding the outcomes we might expect, or if there were areas for improvement in this zoning tool. In early 2021, staff gathered data on the past few years of subdivision concept plans to evaluate how they were using the cluster lot option and to try to identify some key characteristics of each proposal, such as the site size, the current zoning, the number of lots, the amount of open space. In the spring of 2021, we convened 3 stakeholder groups. We were still in the thick of COVID precautions at that point, so we convened smaller groups, each with a different focus, and met largely virtually at first. And we met with a group of neighborhood leaders and residents. We worked with neighbor to neighbor to identify the folks that we invited to that group. And we made sure that we were representing all the different geographic areas of the county where concept plans for subdivision are commonly submitted to the commission. We had a group that was focused on representatives of the development community, so folks that are in the home building space, in the engineering and surveying and site design space, and regular participants in our planning and land use process. And then we also convened a group of folks with more of an advocacy angle, so folks that are involved in some of the organizations that advocate for environmental resource protection, or some of our less represented communities in the county. We met with each of those groups virtually twice. We also exchanged a lot of information and questions in phone conversations and over email. And then additionally in 2021, we met with the Planning Commission twice in work sessions to update you on our progress and get your guidance and direction on how to move forward. Since that time, we have continued to refine our recommendations to you based on the feedback that we received. We posted a draft, an initial draft, just for purposes of public comment in late summer 2021, and we've gotten feedback since then. We continued to refine that, and then most recently, kind of concurrently with the legislation being introduced at council, we held a joint meeting of all of our stakeholders that had been with us through the process to give them a chance to ask questions and inform their comment to you on this proposal. We've continued to work to try to refine based on the comments we've received, and you'll see that reflected in the staff recommendation as well. So a few things that we heard as we went along. The first thing that we learned very quickly is that the term cluster lot or cluster development means a lot of different things to different people. I think when you say that term, a lot of folks think of clustering development in our centers or along our corridors, which is a concept from Nashville Next that we're really focused on. Some people think immediately of multifamily or of cottage developments or other kinds of land uses that aren't necessarily the narrow focus of that tool. Another thing that we had brought to our attention is that over time, as we've enhanced our stormwater management regulations as a county, that's really impacted subdivision design. Those facilities are generally need to be placed in common open space, and so you're seeing that kind of open space in subdivisions, whether they're utilizing the cluster lot tool or not. I think that was an important takeaway. Another bit of feedback that we got is that in some ways and in some areas of the county, the existing zoning designations don't always align with the community vision. Some of those zoning decisions were made in the 70s and the 90s, and that's just a reality that we're grappling with as we see our county continue to develop and grow, and we've done our planning work in some cases more recently. And then more specific to this tool, we did hear some feedback from stakeholders that it appears to allow more density in some cases, that it doesn't necessarily create enough open space, or that it creates open space that may not be protecting the right things. But primarily that maybe the existing cluster lot tool gives too much flexibility in lot size without requiring valuable enough open space, or that those aren't linked together in a way that makes folks feel comfortable with those trade-offs. But one of the kind of overarching things we really heard and took away from our stakeholder engagement and our analysis is that any zoning tool that permits kind of an alternative form of development really needs a clear purpose and intent. For people to understand why it exists and what the sort of trade-offs are between the different standards and any sort of benefits of that. We needed to get that narrowed down and make the purpose very clear. And also that if you try to do too many things with one tool, sometimes it doesn't do all of them particularly well. So one thing we heard from kind of all of our stakeholders and also from the commission during our work sessions is that there's some consensus around the fact that the environmental features we have in the county are part of what makes us unique as a city and as a metro, and that they can be an amenity for our neighborhoods, and that those natural areas can also provide environmental services and other benefits. And we heard that having a zoning tool that permits some flexibility of design can help protect those features. So we really narrowed in on a conservation focus for this tool as a way to give it a more narrowly defined purpose and a way to help everyone better understand how it should work and what to expect. And we also noted that perhaps different or alternative development patterns might be more comfortable to communities and neighborhoods if the open space that was included protected those valuable natural resources. So for those reasons, we narrowed in on the conservation focus. And with that, I'm going to transfer over to Molly, and she's going to walk you through the proposal that staff has put forward for your consideration itself.
The proposal before you tonight replaces the cluster lot option with conservation development. The new purpose is to protect and preserve natural areas. So a site must have a natural area to qualify for this type of development. The proposal establishes a requirement for the preservation of these areas by not permitting disturbance in a natural area preserved in open space. Lot size flexibility is directly linked to the conservation of these areas, and the proposal defines natural areas and outlines who manages. So let's look at the difference between the cluster lot option and the conservation development proposal. With the cluster lot, it is an optional standard. 15% of a site is required to be open space. In return for the creation of this open space, the minimum lot size can be reduced down to zoning districts. While natural areas are mentioned in this section of the code, they are not defined or required to be preserved. With the conservation development, we see if a site meets certain criteria, this will be a required style of development. If a site has at least 10% natural area, then these standards will be utilized. If a site contains more than 20% natural features, then a minimum of 20% must be preserved and remain undisturbed. With this proposal, the minimum lot size can be reduced an equivalent amount as the natural preservation. The more land that is preserved, the smaller the minimum lot size. So the emphasis here is on the preservation of a natural area. So what is a natural area? Natural areas are 100-year floodplain, streams, 20% or greater natural slopes, problem soils, wetlands, endangered species habitat, cedar glade areas, archaeological or historic sites, and trees. So how will this work in the development of a parcel of land? Let's look at an example site. On this site, the property is zoned R10, 1 or 2 family residential. The minimum lot size would be 10,000 square feet. And we're going to assume in this example that 30% of the site is natural area. With the current cluster lot option, if we apply it to this site, then 15% is required to be an open space. And when you create this open space, the lots can be reduced in size down to zoning districts. So we would go from a minimum of 10,000 square feet to a new minimum of 6,000 square feet. And with the cluster lot option, disturbance of any existing natural area does not affect the lot size, and no natural area preservation is required. With the conservation development proposal, we know that 20% preservation will be required on this example site because the site contains 30% natural area. So if we preserve 20%, then the lot size goes down by 20% to 8,000 square feet. In the next scenario, the same existing site, we see that if the natural area preservation goes up to 30%, you get the same amount of lot size reduction. So the new minimum lot size would then be 7,000 square feet. But remember, if we use the cluster lot on this same example site, then the lot size would go down 2 zoning districts to 6,000 square feet. And that's regardless of how much open space is provided. So what impacts do we see with this new type of development? There will be an increase in not only protection, but also the preservation of natural areas. There will still be the allowance for the reduction of lot size, but now the amount of that reduction will be tied directly to the amount of natural area preservation. When compared to a cluster lot development, there will likely be an increase in the average lot size and a reduction in lot yield. But the final size and number of lots will really depend upon the exact site conditions, just like they do today. In a conservation development, stormwater features created in open space will not count towards lot size flexibility. To summarize, the purpose of this proposal is to preserve natural areas. This amendment establishes a requirement for the preservation of these areas by placing them in platted open space. Lot size flexibility is directly linked to the conservation of natural areas. These standards are intended to guide development on parcels with environmentally sensitive areas by encouraging these decisions to be based on the characteristics of the land in a very site-specific way. This amendment provides incentives to reduce the disturbance of the areas that define this region, and by linking the flexibility of lot size directly to the amount and quality of the natural area open space provided, it ensures a balance between flexibility and protection. Based on stakeholder feedback, staff has further refined this amendment. We are recommending a second substitute with 3 changes. This substitute clarifies the natural area as it applies to rural subdivisions. There is a cap now on lot size reduction to a 2-district maximum in rural subdivisions. And the substitute also clarifies the platting of open space and phased development. This conservation development amendment addresses the need for natural areas in subdivisions. During stakeholder meetings, staff received comments about the effect the conservation development proposal, which replaces cluster, could have on housing developed in Metro and the potential impacts of the loss of flexibility on development cost. We also received comments about the need for a formal or truly usable type of recreation open space in subdivisions. In fact, we received an example scenario on a cluster development that showed that this conservation development proposal would not apply to that property, and so it would be required to be developed as a conventional subdivision. From these comments and example scenarios, staff is now working on a new development tool to ensure the efficient use of land less constrained by natural features. On these sites, development might be permitted to reduce the minimum lot size in return for providing usable open space. The existence of natural areas on a proposed development site can prove to be challenging, but not every piece of property is, by its very nature, meant to have the same pattern of development. By encouraging development and redevelopment of unconstrained sites, necessary housing may be provided for a growing population. Staff is evaluating and actively working on this next amendment for unconstrained sites. It would be a new, separate amendment to the zoning code. And as we see this today, the purpose and intent of this section might be the encouragement of the provision of a diverse and flexible housing and the incorporation of recreation or usable open space in subdivisions. It might apply to sites that have no natural area or less than 10% as defined in the current amendment. It might apply in zoning districts R, R10, R15, or R20. And it also might apply outside of T2 rural policy areas. We are continuing to refine the details of this next amendment and will be working closely with the Housing Division staff to ensure that the new tool is aligned with housing goals. We do anticipate bringing this to the Commission in the near future. But back to the proposal before you tonight. Staff recommends approval of the Conservation Development proposal with the second substitute. As a companion to this Conservation Development Amendment is item 18B, conservation trees. The bulk of this proposal is content neutral. It is just the relocation of 1724 Article 2, tree protection and replacement, and 1740 450 designation of tree types. These sections are being relocated to a new section, 1728-65 trees. By this relocation, trees will be grouped with the existing standards for other natural areas such as hillsides, floodplains, problem soils, and cedar glades. Due to the new importance placed on protection of natural areas, minor updates are needed to the existing standards pertaining to tree protection fencing to ensure natural areas remain protected during construction. These updates include the establishment of a standard for the language of signage on the required tree protection fencing, the addition of a tree replacement requirement for any trees removed from an area inside tree protection fence and proposed for preservation, the clarification of how tree protection fence and silt fence should be coordinated. Staff recommends approval of a substitute to correct minor typographical errors identified in the legislation as originally filed. In summary, staff recommends approval of both items as described. And as a reminder, you will need to vote separately on each of these items. We are happy to entertain any questions you have.
Thank you. And was that your first presentation?
Yes.
It was not bad. It's very good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it very much. Thanks, y'all. So, commissioners, we'll open this item for public hearing, and obviously, the hearing will be for both items, and then we'll vote separately at the end. And so, the applicant in this case is really the Planning Commission working with the council members. So, Council Lady, you want to come on up and just kind of kick us off? We really appreciate you coming down.
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you, Chair. I'm Councilwoman Angie Henderson. I serve District 34 in the southwest area of the county. That includes Green Hills, Forest Hills, Oak Hill, and Bellevue. And Bellevue, as you all may know, I've got 3 colleagues also serving out in that area. Beautiful hillsides and a lot of beautiful natural area to protect. And so when I ran for office, I did so on a platform of delivering sidewalks, environmental legislation, street trees, and updating our tree code. And that has really been kind of myriad work and complicated work somewhat when we're, as you all know, trying to do land use regulations for 526 square miles. So I'm very grateful to staff, to Sean and to Molly and to Director Kemp. Sean has, or Ms. Shepherd has worked with me now. This will be the third bill. And so I want to express especially support to the or thanks to the administration and to Director Kemp for recognizing the need on your staff for folks to focus on policy and text amendments and to listening to the community that trees and conservation in those areas are important to them, and they want to see policy aligned with our general plan, but that is responsive to the demands of development and the unique character of our community. So having staff's support, the addition of Ms. Pike really to look very extensively through our tree code and the cluster lot as you all had directed, and really bringing those things together. When we looked at what could we do in this conservation space with our areas that, we have our conservation overlays, areas that we know have critical soils and slopes, and as the county comes under more development pressure, what are a variety of tools that we can bring to bear to make sure that we are developing in a principled manner about what we've outlined in Nashville Next that are our priorities, but that also meet the needs of the development community. And so in looking at that, there's our hillside development standards, there's our kind of grading policy, single and two-family, all these things. It's sort of a complex puzzle. But certainly, as I've learned over time with the sidewalk legislation, which then followed the tree density bill, which then was the street tree bill, the order in which you do these things matters. And you have to kind of lay a foundation. And as you see here, moving this portion of the tree elements into a separate part of the code and really sort of reorganizing things for success and for clarity. And so having staff be able to kind of focus on that and think of the really big picture, it's taken some time to get here, I think. We've had kind of 3 mayors in 4 years, and a tornado and a derecho and a bombing and a flood and a whole lot of things going on. So I really do appreciate staff's diligence in kind of keeping their eyes on this conservation space and the importance of that. As I looked at among the many things that I felt needed to be updated or improved, I had long felt that the cluster lot could be a better environmental tool. What Ms. Shepherd highlighted in her staff report, that the community was not really feeling that kind of the density trade-off was aligned with protecting things about which, the community, not just that they cared about, but that we're really under a lot of pressure from a loss perspective, like our hillsides and our forests and so forth. And so I'm really pleased to see the evolution of this work and kind of where we arrived at the end with this conservation development tool. I have read and listened through all the stakeholder meetings. I really do appreciate the information that has been online from the public's engagement. Presentations very similar to what you've seen today. So I do think there has been a lot of good thinking about and good engagement with this bill. I also want to thank my co-sponsors, which I think importantly include all current and former Council Planning Commission members. So Commissioner Withers is here. Also, though, former Commissioner Murphy and former Commissioner Allen, Council Lady Allen and Murphy, and as well as Council Lady Benedict and Councilman Druffel. And so that's a diverse kind of geographical and context group of folks, and folks that have been in leadership on your commission. So I appreciate their review of the bill and engagement and co-sponsorship. You all have 191 emails in support of this bill and 1 email in opposition. And so without yet making formal requests for organizational support, which I would typically do kind of as it moves to the council side of things, there is already an endorsement of support from the Southern Environmental Law Center and the Nashville Tree Conservation Corps. And I think I would like, if I may, just to read kind of the recitals of this bill, because just briefly, it really outlines the context within which, just for the public's understanding and my colleagues, once this moves to the council side, kind of where we're coming from and how we've contextualized this legislation and this tool and what it could do. So the second substitute and for both bills, our recitals are similar, and they say, whereas Metro Nashville and Davidson County is characterized by rolling hills, steep bluffs, valleys, floodplains, forests, and numerous rivers and streams, and whereas Nashville Next, Metro's general plan adopted in 2015, identifies such natural areas as important community assets that provide benefits including enhancing air and water quality, moderating temperature, providing wildlife habitat, and better quality of life for residents. And whereas Nashville Next identifies the importance of sensitive development techniques to minimize hazards associated with development in natural areas and to balance preservation and development to create resiliency. And whereas allowing for flexibility in development patterns within existing zoning allowances can help to achieve goals to balance development with protection and conservation of sensitive natural areas. And whereas updating the standards of the zoning code pertaining to the cluster lot option will help ensure that flexibility of lot size and development pattern are appropriately balanced and linked with the quantity and quality of natural area conservation achieved by the proposed development. And so with that, I look forward to hearing any of the citizen comments, and I would welcome your questions at the end. And should I just leave the mic on, Chair?
Yeah, just leave it on. Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you.
And very much appreciate you carrying the legislation. And thank you for your commitment on a lot of big and complex bills. You've been a true soldier, so thank you very much.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, so the council lady is acting as the applicant, and so Council Lady Henderson will save, at the end, we'll make sure that you go last, okay? But before we start, the comments, I do want to remind everybody I want to thank the commissioners because we had a couple of really hard hearings, and they were, I think, around 2019, moving into 2020, with a lot of opposition on some of the cluster lot provisions. And so I want to thank the commissioners for taking this up as one of the projects that we work on in updating our own rules and our own code, and I really appreciate the commissioners working on that, and especially the staff team. I want to thank you guys for really working on this a lot, and the director for, it's a very complex, as we started the process, I remember talking about this over WebEx during COVID. So we were doing electronic meetings at that time. So we had at least 2 or 3 times when we talked about it as a commission, not just in a public hearing, but specifically about the cluster lot provision. And I want to thank personally for changing the name. Thank you. I think the director wants to say something. There's been a couple of new developments that have come up. So, hold on.
Oh.
You just said.
I'm intimidated of pressing the technology because it could turn everything off. Did you want me to make my comments after the public hearing, sir, or did you?
No, go ahead right now, because
Okay.
I think it's important that everybody hears it.
Okay,
before
so we did, as the councilwoman noted, receive quite a bit of positive feedback. I think there were, at my count, 150 letters of support, maybe 191. We did receive a request for deferral from a member of the Home Builders Association this morning. I know sometimes, commissioners, your schedules are busy, so I don't know when you look at the public feed. I would just say, that this is a complex matter, and we want to make sure that the department is transparent and that all of the outcomes around our work are well understood. I don't expect there to be consensus on every point. That's fairly impossible in a land use space, but we do want to provide every opportunity for debate and discussion and evaluation. I do also want to say, in response to some of the concerns from the development community, we are very committed to evaluating a tool that would allow for flexibility of housing options, particularly on non-constrained sites. We are committed. You heard the work session from Angie Hubbard about our new work around housing, and that is a commitment from this department to lead in that area. So we're committed there. But we do have a request to defer for further discussion, and so I wanted to make sure that you saw the request. And as I've shared with the sponsor, and I'm so grateful for Councilwoman Henderson for your leadership in this space. So thank you. That, ensuring that we have a full vetting of issues is good. And so I just put that on your radar to discuss today.
Thank you. And so as we move forward, if the commission decides to defer, we'll get to that discussion after the public hearing. So we are still in the public hearing, and thank you for that clarification. I think that's important. So now we're on to the point of the public hearing. Is anyone wishing to speak in support? Come on up. Appreciate y'all coming down.
Thank you, Roy Dale, 516 Heather Place. There's no way I can do this in 2 minutes, but there's a little history behind this. I was in the council in the 90s. I actually helped write the cluster lot provisions of the zoning code. And the reason we wrote the cluster lot provisions is because we wanted to regulate floodplains and slopes. And we had fairly strenuous slope requirements, which we consider 20% or 25% steep. It's not really that steep. You can grade it 3-to-1. That's 33%. So sort of it's a trade-off. That's why the cluster lot was created. But through the years, what's actually happened is, if you look at every subdivision in this county, I'd say 95% of them are cluster lot developments because mainly of stormwater. Stormwater is now requiring a huge amount of space within a subdivision. So I think it's good to change the name. Cluster lot was a very poor choice of words. Even critical slope is poor, should be sensitive slope. Sometimes we do things that just really cut our nose off. And so I think that I appreciate what the council member is doing. I think she's doing a very good job. Changing this name to something other than cluster lot is really good. I hope that you do pursue the alternate tool, which is going to be really needed, because currently, if you develop a subdivision based upon these new requirements and you have no sensitive slopes or no floodplain, you cannot use this criteria. You're going to wind up setting up about 20% of your site for stormwater, for open space, for recreation space, and you're going to lose a lot of density. And it's not going to be pleasant for the development community. So I hope that the council member understands this. I know the Planning Commission does. The staff, you have a great staff. I've been in constant communication with them. They get it. That's why you're talking about this future tool, and I hope that you do that because it's going to really be needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dale. Appreciate you naming it that. Didn't last the test of time. It's like an old good movie. Anyone else wishing to speak in support? Come on up. Welcome. Appreciate you coming down.
I'll get situated here. Thank you all. Thank you. I see I've got 5 minutes already. I appreciate that. Commissioners, council members, staff, my name is George Ewing. I live at 4601 Whites Creek Pike. I'm president of Friends of Whites Creek and Neighbors Group. I was invited to attend the series of cluster lot revision roundtables, and I want to thank you for the opportunity here to improve that tool. Quote, "Under all is the land. Upon its wise utilization and widely allocated ownership depend the survival and growth of free institutions of our civilization. The interests of the nation and its citizen require the highest and best use of the land and the preservation of a healthful environment." End quote. Strangely, that's the preamble of the Realtor Code of Ethics. I'm a realtor. It may be odd, but that kept lingering as some sort of backdrop for my thoughts as I kept working on this. There's some other words in there, but you get the idea. I feel like we're at this opportunity to really improve this very important tool, conserve natural areas, reduce lot size, link them together, and that's what we've done. It's what staff is recommending. It's what now produces a tool that better achieves the commission's goals. And this is also what happens elsewhere. I'd like to point out that Memphis, Shelby County, there's a 20% open space requirement for their open space tool. Yet planners and consultants there have also proposed a tiered system where an open space subdivision requires a minimum of 35%, and then a new classification of what is called an amenity subdivision which requires a minimum of 50% open space. Knoxville has a conservation subdivision program that requires generally 40 to 60% of the parcel be open space. And further, Knox County has adopted an entire hillside and ridgetop protection plan as a separate document. Suitability of parcels, some concerns about how this would be applied, parcels that are very challenging. I feel like the ratio of 1-to-1 gives builders that flexibility to stay off of the challenging areas and reduce the footprint and lot size to better achieve the goals of the tool. I'd also like to point out that in Nashville Next, adopted as a policy document, that in action items NR 1.4182, there's a midterm goal of enacting a conservation subdivision ordinance with a minimum of 50% open space. That's on page IVR 4-70. And then also in action items NR 1.4174 was revise the existing cluster lot subdivision regulations to increase the amount of required preserved land space to be 33% minimum. So in case you think that as a community advocate, we're getting our whole basket of goodies, we're not. But I really appreciate the work that staff has done to hone this tool and improve it to where it is. And I really hope that you will vote yes and approve it.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in support? Come on down.
Hey, my name is Elizabeth Fox. I live at 3812 Whitland Avenue, and I'm a board member of the National Tree Conservation Corps. I want to thank all of y'all for your support for the city. I don't think you probably hear it enough, and I genuinely appreciate the thought that has gone into this. I'm here to speak in support of the conservation development proposal. It offers flexibility in the design of subdivisions within existing zoning. It promotes the environmental protection while not decreasing density, and it promotes the creation of lots on less sensitive environmental areas, and that includes hillsides, streams, slopes, wetlands, and protects trees. Trees are an important form of our natural infrastructure, and I think the hard thing about being on this board is the more you raise your awareness of the decreasing canopy, the harder it is to look at. I think that this is an excellent bill. It's been vetted, and I think it provides a myriad of different benefits, most of all preservation of the natural beauty of Nashville, Tennessee. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Fox. Who else wants to come on up? And don't forget to state your name and address. Appreciate it.
Good afternoon. My name's Angela Williams, and I live at 7203 Old Hickory Boulevard in Whites Creek. And I thought to myself, what can I contribute to this discussion that maybe appeal to your higher sense of self? So I'm a medical provider in high-risk emergency rooms at Skyline and at Southern Hills. And there's a rising body of evidence that the built environment is foundational to health equity. Green space has significant positive effect on a wide range of mental and physical health issues, from diabetes to anxiety. According to Stanford University, individuals who live in urban areas have a 20% greater risk of developing anxiety disorders, 40% higher risk of developing mood disorders than those living in rural areas. So in the New York Times article, it said, if you want to map the inequity of health, just count the trees. There's a 31-degree difference between East Harlem than in New York than Central Park. So District 1, 2, and 3 have large health inequities. The built environment is foundational to the health equity issue and the incorporation of natural green space is vital. I ask that you invest in the long-term health and welfare of the community and the resilience of Nashville over the short-term profitability of builders. Health, and this cannot be done by the medical community alone or the hospitals or HCA, but it has to be done through planning and policy and us together as citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Come on up.
Go ahead.
They're fighting over it.
That's right.
Come on.
My name's Matt Dowd. I live at 509 Jefferson Davis Drive. I believe this ordinance is something that Nashville needs, but I'm concerned about the alternative tool and the ability for sites that don't have the conservation. I think this is a great tool for the sites that do have it, as Ms. Pike said, and staff is looking at an alternative for the sites that may not have those natural resources. And what I, as in the development community, are concerned about that is if this public hearing is closed, I think under pending legislation law, that this would become the ordinance and would take the place of the cluster lot ordinance. With that being said, for sites that don't have the natural resources, I'll give you an example. The site that we're working on is a small 24-acre site, and right now we're doing RS10 with a cluster, and it's 83 lots. And if we have to use this ordinance, we would go down to 53 lots. With the costs the way they are in Nashville, land costs, material costs, everything, it's not just about profitability, it's about home costs. So we'd be looking at home costs going from $280,000 or $300,000 to up over $350,000 just to make the projects work. So while I believe this is a great ordinance and can work for Nashville, I want the commission to consider this, maybe leaving the public hearing open and considering the alternate tool to make sure that these other properties aren't increasing our home costs for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Come on up.
And I had requested 5 minutes for Elise. Yep, sorry, I'll get up here close.
We got you.
Hopefully this will. Maybe. Okay, so that's not going to work. So my name's Elise Hudson. I live at 4601 Whites Creek Pike, and I would like to speak in support of both 18A and 18B. Obviously, thank you for being here. It's always, every time I'm here, it blows me away that everybody's volunteers, pretty much. So I think that these new updates to the code make a lot of sense and really help us get more in compliance with Nashville Next. As we are all aware of the lawsuits that my family brought, Nashville Next has been really reinforced by some of the judicial branch over the last few years. And basically, this law, or this change in the law, will bring the cluster lot option, changing it to the conservation, more in line with what Nashville Next, instead of being in conflict with it. And so the conservation policy, which is generally defined in this code updates as the the areas of the bullet points, which are like streams and slopes, things like that. That's basically the same thing. Not always, but in general, the areas that they're talking about as these natural areas are going to be listed as conservation policy on the policy maps. The conservation policy states that its intent is to keep undisturbed environmentally sensitive land features in a natural state and remediate environmentally sensitive features that have been disturbed when development or redevelopment takes place. Any new development is should be minimal to protect water quality, minimize infrastructure, public service costs, and preserve the unique environmental diversity. And so that was straight from the Transect Manual, Section 3, page 69. The primary intent of that policy is preservation rather than remediation, and it really speaks specifically also on page 70 about how the conservation areas reduce the buildable area and can have an economic impact on development. And so the properties actually quote, therefore the property owners must be prepared to utilize the unique development tools and options for a land that contains environmental constraints and recognize that the initial value of the land may be compromised by the presence of these environmental sensitive areas. So it talks specifically about how preservation is more important than the excuse of having some sort of economic reason to build more. Nashville Next also talks about further design principles in the CO policy area on page 71, where it talks about that the development should be grouped on the site to preserve the environmentally sensitive features. And in general, the more environmentally sensitive the site is, the lower acceptable density or intensity of the development is. Now, obviously, we need to find a compromise, and we think that this bill has presented a very hard-won compromise because it allows developers to decrease the size of their lots in proportion to the land that's conserved. And so this means that this update will allow smaller lot sizes in some instances than the existing cluster lot option. There's more flexibility of that lot. There's more unique ability for patterns to be changed. And, we have a lot of area today that if you've only got 15% that's being preserved under the cluster lot today, most of that's taken up by the stormwater mitigation or stormwater management areas. And so having that aspect of this is really important to us so that there actually are natural areas that are undisturbed. So, there were some concerns from the community. So this is not a perfect bill. Obviously, we didn't all get what we wanted out of this, right? I think that there's some concerns about setting precedents for smaller lots in neighborhoods than would normally be allowed under a cluster lot option today. And so keep that in mind if this passes and you go forward, because the rule of you have these smaller lots in this neighborhood is now a little bit differently, in terms of precedents, should be differently applied in terms of how much land is preserved around it as well. This is a very complicated process. It's also, very difficult for the lay people of the community to calculate these things and really understand whether they're in compliance or not. And it's very difficult to get an engineer to work for the community in the city. The people of the communities here are already really overburdened in terms of their neighborhood watchdog responsibilities today. So I think that this is a great compromise. We'd ask that you please support both 18A and B. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in support? All right, seeing none. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Anyone in opposition? Come on up. Give it over to the team over here. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Ian Rett from Cato Neighbors. I asked for 5 minutes. If you could allow that. Thank you so much. I live at 4600 Cato Road. And to be honest with you, I am in favor of this. I have one asterisk, however, and that's what I wanted to speak to. What I'm passing around right now is some screenshots from the CCM around T2 Rural. And my concern is specifically around allowing clustering of density in places where we clearly don't want density to allow. There's the 290-acre parcel that you discussed recently, and you came out to Cato Road. You said that there was concerns about allowable density, and my concern is that in T2 rural transects is specifically to allow open spaces and the preservation of rural areas. And if we allow cluster lots or conservation to happen in areas in like this Cato Road area, if you've got 20% of the land that's actually usable, and you put all of the density in that 20% of the land, you now have a pocket of density that is completely out of character for what the land use policy calls for. So my request to the commission is to exclude T2 from this consideration. And if this is going to be considered in the new tool, which I haven't referred to or even know about, then please disregard my comments. But specifically where the Nashville Next calls for preservation of open space and preservation of the rural character to allow a formula that allows density in places where density is not intended does not make sense to me. And so I would ask that the commission either specifically come up with a new tool, maybe that's the case in the intent of this new tool, to focus specifically on handling issues like that. But I really want to exclude T2 rural from the consideration of allowing density. We have something so beautiful in Nashville, this really super desirable place to live, and this immense richness of natural resources. And I really thank the commission and also planning and all the people who are involved in this very big conversation that we have in Nashville, trying to manage the intense desire for everyone to move here and grow and accommodate that and still preserve the rich, beautiful natural census that we have. The intent of the T2 policies, as I've shown here, is clearly to preserve that character. So I just don't quite understand how allowing density as a workaround. It almost feels like the cluster lot option was put into the T2 as a kind of a loophole. And I just ask that there be some consideration to preserving the intent of the T2 rural policy. Otherwise, I agree that this is a good proposal. We want to preserve open space. We want to have, I think, on a leaning towards the preservation as opposed to allowing rampant development. And I think these are really good points. The last thing I want to say, and if I'm just to everyone in the room, if anybody knows of a resource that shows the number of permitted units that have been allowed to be built, we have the number of building permits that are allowed that show a number of permits, but a permit can allow for 400 units. It does not. I've talked to planning, I've talked to codes, I've talked to the hub. I have yet to find a resource that says this is how many units we've approved. We can all agree that there's a demand for housing, but if we don't have this number and know that X number of units have been approved, there's no way for us to manage the overall balance. So my request is for anyone in the room, if you know of a resource that says we have 500, units that have been approved this week or whatever, I think that'd be very helpful to this conversation as we together try to figure out how to manage the desire for growth and density where density is appropriate, and also preserving the natural resources. So I guess in summary, I'll just ask you to approve, even though I'm rising to oppose, with the asterisk that we figure out how to handle this T2 rural density question, because it's clearly not happening in the cluster lot option. It doesn't appear to be happening in this revision. It may be happening in the new tool, and I look forward to hearing more about that. Thank you all.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I did see Council Lady Gamble is still here. Would you, before Council Lady Henderson closes out, would you like to speak on this issue, or are you want to make sure we take care of the council members? Come on up.
Thank you. I wasn't planning to speak on this issue. I am in support of this conservation development proposal. I do have one concern, though, over the prohibition of all recreational facilities as a use for space within the conservation development option. I think that having walkways as a part of a permitted use is important, but I think having then the option of recreational use is just as important, and it can be done in a way that we're not using impervious pavement, but permeable pavement, and maybe reducing the allowance of how many recreational facilities, maybe one per ratio. I think that can be worked out. But that would be the only concern that I have, is to make sure that we're not discriminating against other options for recreational facilities that communities can enjoy and need as well, and figure out how we can work that in without affecting any water flow or any maximizing the amount of space for green space. But with that, I certainly support it. Most of my area is T3 transect, and a lot of these cluster lot options happen in that T3 transect communities. So have a lot of interest in this. Community has a lot of interest in this, and I appreciate the Planning Department and Councilmember Henderson for bringing this forward for you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Lady. And we'll address the recreational question when we get into discussion. Council Lady Henderson, would you like to finish us off?
I just want to thank everyone who came to speak, and I learned a lot. I really did. I really do appreciate citizens' engagement with Nashville Next and all our regulations and the effect that has. A little history lesson there from Mr. Tail. I didn't know that history. I think what I would say around the alternative tool that has been proposed through some of the stakeholder feedback, and Councilor Gamble alluded to it. I do want us to be mindful that, we're not saying you can't have, recreation or a playground or tennis courts. That just does not count towards the natural area protection, right? So we're trying to increase the value from a balance and trade-off standpoint of area that is preserved, protected, and cannot be disturbed. I think that's crucial because we've seen in areas where, we check the box for open space, but, we've graded off all the trees and we've created the stormwater stuff. And so I think Ms. Shepherd may have said it earlier, it can't be all things, and in trying to make a particular tool be all things, it gets diluted and becomes not particularly effective. And so I think what this bill aims to do is to really prioritize forest, hillside, hilltop, stands of mature trees, heritage trees, and really elevating those as the things we want to value as we create our incentives. I appreciate your consideration. I think Director Kemp alluded to a request for deferral, and I guess I would just ask, I believe that was from Mr. Hostetler, is that correct? Yeah.
Yes, and I might ask staff just to pull it up. I don't remember if it was on behalf of the Home Builders Association as an organization or just the individual.
Yeah,
okay. We'll confirm.
I read that as he alluded to what the Home Builders Association might do in support of his request, but it was just, I believe, someone with the Home Builders CC'd. So I did want to be sure to be clear. I did not read that email as the Home Builders Association saying that they were opposed. I wanted to remind commissioners that this has been a lengthy process, stakeholder process, with which there was a lengthy list of home builder stakeholders of all sizes involved in the process. And I do, again, we spoke to the complexity of trying to calculate all these things and how they pencil out. I want everybody to be comfortable with this and for us to take the time that we need. But then I also do respectfully ask, when you have something that's sort of, late breaking, one email because that certain individual CC's in other folks that seem to represent a larger group, let's just think about how we balance that. Our natural areas are under a lot of pressure, and so this has the substitute recommended by staff has an effective date of June 15th. Is that correct, I believe? And so I would also ask Commission to be mindful, Councilmember Withers will recall, we are moving into the budget process, and that means we do not have a public hearing in June because we're taking up the budget. So I would ask if commissioners do choose to defer, it is only for one meeting so that we can be responsive to the concerns, but that we can kind of still keep on track for a May public hearing and to get this done and timely, given the lengthy engagement and great work of staff. So, thank you.
Thank you, Council Lady. Seeing no one else wishing to speak, I declare the public hearing closed. And so, Vice Chair, would you like to go first?
First, I love being first.
So that's Vice Chair.
So I think I have more questions at this point than anything. One, I guess I need to kind of make sure I understand a little bit more about the alternative tool discussion. Is it, so if this were to go forward right now, does that mean that the current cluster lot is gone completely? It could not apply anywhere. Is that correct?
Yeah, Commissioner, as this is currently set up, the legislation would replace the current cluster lot standards with conservation development. So if adopted in this form, the current cluster lot tool would no longer be present in the zoning code.
So any project that is contemplating the use of the cluster lot right now would no longer be able to use that after June 15th until we had this alternative tool in place.
That's right. There would be, depending on the timing of adoption of any other tools, there could be a period of time where they would need to either proceed prior to the effective date, or as of the effective date, there would not be a different option for them until such time as that was prepared and adopted.
Okay. That's really helpful to know. I think this seems like I'm very impressed with the process that staff has undertaken, and to do this during the period of COVID is even more impressive. To have so little opposition and actually to have the development community speaking in support of this is really a testament to the work that you guys have done. So I think it's definitely going in the right direction. I think that there were some good questions raised by some of the commenters here today. And I guess personally, I'm definitely a visual person, and so I do like the concept of, if not case studies, then a few more examples. And I know we probably can't use cases that we've already looked at as our examples, but it would really help me to think about some of the ones where we've had issues with the cluster lot and think about, what would this look like under this, how would this have changed the development, which raised a lot of concerns for all of us. How would this change what that development looks like? So I do feel like I personally would be more comfortable with a few more examples. I know that that's what Mr. Hostetler said they would agree to do. I don't know if that's a valid offer or not, but, I do think that kind of a case study would be helpful and give me some additional comfort with this going forward. I thought that the question around T2 rural was a really good one, and the idea that if you did end up with 20% of the land actually being developable, could we end up with this really out of place, even though it's only using that small amount of land, a totally out of place development pattern? that does raise a concern to me. So I don't know how, if the T2, I'm sure that did come up, knowing Whites Creek is here. But
So, Commissioner, to clarify a little bit on that particular aspect, the current rural subdivision regulations, which were quite thoroughly discussed and debated and worked through prior to their adoption, they currently permit the use of the cluster lot option within the development footprint part of the site. So the rural subdivision regulations already specify that certain primary conservation lands be identified and set aside first. Our intent with this entire effort was not to fundamentally alter how the rural subdivision regulations function, but noting that they reference the cluster lot option, we had to sort of figure out how it would all fit together so that it can continue to function basically as it does today. We initially recommended that we've always had in the staff drafts a provision that the open space or the conservation land or natural area requirements in a rural subdivision would follow the primary conservation land provisions of the rural subdivision regulations, so those govern. Initially, we had looked at allowing the broader range of lot size flexibility that this tool would offer, even in a rural setting. And we did receive feedback from stakeholders with some concerns about that, because you have to protect all of the primary conservation areas in a rural subdivision either way. It doesn't give you a minimum percent, it just says all of them. And so there was concern that we were creating flexibility beyond the current amount without requiring anything beyond what the rural subdivision regulations already require. To address that, the second substitute does put a cap in a rural subdivision. No matter how much natural area open space there is, you can still only reduce a maximum of 2 districts. That is different from how it would work outside of a rural subdivision, where you would have flexibility exactly equivalent to your natural area. So that was an attempt, as I said, to try to keep the status quo in terms of how this kind of tool relates to the rural subdivision regulations. We did receive comments about whether we should have clustering or grouping or any sort of flexible development in a rural setting. We received a number of comments that would suggest that a lot of folks find the existing zoning that applies in some of our rural policy areas doesn't line up with what they perceive to be rural character, and that's a reality that is out there. But our ambition was to keep this as consistent with the way the rural subdivision regulations work today as possible.
I'm going to try.
Director.
I just want to reiterate one thing that Ms. Shepherd said. One of the challenges in the rural policy areas is that some of the zoning is suburban. And this commission is not able to rezone property. That's a council decision. But I think that is the source of quite a bit of tension. Whether it was appropriate or not to apply rural policy where there was already zoning in place is something we've debated and discussed. And since the policy is aspirational, we've settled on that. But again, it comes back to the same issue with the rural policy areas and the current zoning.
that's all very helpful. Well, I really like the intentionality of this. I mean, it has bothered me that and I know it's been a comment frequently that we're offering the cluster lot development, but we're basically only offering that because of a lot of land that's not developable. And that's, it's not necessarily that it's something that's intentionally getting set aside as open space. It's just that it can't be developed. So I do like the fact that we're creating a very intentional policy here and an intentional effort to preserve those natural features. I think I'm going to listen more. I am somewhat leaning towards an idea of a deferral. Unfortunately, a deferral for one meeting, I don't know, given the staff workload, if the kinds of things that we're talking about with case studies can be accomplished in 3 weeks.
I can speak to that. We already have some subdivision models that we looked at. We received several from the builder development community that showed impacts, and that's partly what led us to the conclusion that we did need to come up with a follow-up tool that addressed sites that were not encumbered by natural features. I think I would recommend the deferral because of the complexity of this, of the issue that we're dealing with, and my goal of ensuring that everybody has we have a transparent opportunity to debate and have all the analysis done. To the Councilwoman's point, we've been at this for about a year, but I don't think one more meeting deferral is harmful. And, we'll do our best within that time frame to, work through the issues and questions at hand. I did want to note one other issue you raised, which was, should we leave I think I heard you say, should we leave the cluster in place?
That was going to be my next point.
Right. I opted not to recommend that only because I felt like it would create confusion. But I think I do recommend the deferral, but I think if the commission could give us feedback, that would be very helpful so that we can have a productive conversation during the deferral, if that's the will of the commission. I think if you wanted to go that direction, that's just something we would really need to clarify, that the cluster would only govern the space that is not included in the conservation areas. And I want to make sure that we don't do anything to complicate an already difficult, challenging issue. But anyway, thank you for the question. I support the deferral if that's the direction you want to go in, but would very much welcome your feedback to make sure that we are going in the right direction or give us additional direction as well.
Well, I think that was going to be my next question or point, is just I do have some concern about these two tools not going together in tandem. I'm not sure what that second tool looks like exactly. I don't think it is exactly the existing cluster lot. So, I understand wanting to leave it in place so that there's some certainty in the development community for right now. And I am, I do think it's compelling, the case that's made that, if we're cutting the number of lots that can suddenly be developed in half, that's not going to help us with our need for additional housing, and especially more affordable housing in the short run. But I think we don't want to see the cluster lot. Our issues with the cluster lot are not just in these conservation areas. And so I think we need to be very intentional about what that replacement tool looks like. And so I guess the question would also be just what do you think is the timeline for something like that?
So we gave a lot of thought. While I do support the deferral, and we gave a lot of thought to separating the conservation-oriented work, which presented itself very clearly from a technical and community engagement perspective as having a specific purpose and approach. So I do think there's a reasonable argument to keeping them separate. But I think we could come up with a recommendation for keeping, if you're not meeting those rigorous tests, if you have a flatter site or a site that's less encumbered, doing something that would keep that in place while we evaluated the secondary tool. I agree with you. I don't think that just keeping the cluster in place for less encumbered properties, it doesn't address some of the comments we've received from the community. And I think it's, I'll give some thought to that, but we're working on the proposal now. I think it will probably take several months to come up with a recommendation, and it's something we would want to vet with you to make sure that it's sort of a different tool. And so, but we understand the importance and we'll move quickly.
Well, I will listen to my other commissioners.
Commissioner Tibbs?
Vice Chair, I actually got one of the big ones for me, and that was the case study, because that was what I was trying to do, is apply it, and then I got kind of lost in it. But I do think there was one chart that you did that was beneficial in the beginning when it showed what was to be and what was the old version and the cluster. Do you remember that one? If you could go back to that. Yeah, that one. That was good. So, because this was to me, well, maybe this is kind of a, since we're leaning toward deferral anyway, I think something like this is good for us when we're looking at maybe a case study, because it shows maybe what we would have approved last time, or, what the cluster law would allow and what this would, because this was actually giving me some, it went away before I should have taken a picture of it so I could have gone back to it. But this is very beneficial as we're kind of looking at what we're going to be looking at next time. And so that very first one, though, when it was optional and required if criteria met, did you eliminate that? Did you change that?
Not in, let me make sure I understand your question. Later on in the presentation, did we speak about it differently, or later on in our process, did we have a different approach?
I felt like when it got to the recommendation that this part went away, or it stayed with it. Okay, so obviously this is where I could definitely like to better go through a checklist, kind of seeing what we would have done before. And I won't go through any more and just to, like I said, belabor the fact, because that's what I really need. I'm definitely visual and I get lost in the words. And I do think, though, getting rid of the cluster, though, makes sense. So just not to get confusing with it, just as that point get brought up. I'm going to leave it at that. I think the next time I'll maybe have a little bit more to get to it when it gets set.
Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'd like to thank Director Camp and our staff. It is a really complicated issue, but I am really like the plan, what I'm seeing, and 191 comment in support that include our former planning commission, Stuart Clifton's concise comment. So I think it speaks volume. So how Nashvilleian loves preservation, and especially preservation of trees and hillside. That's a big deal. So I think this proposal literally achieve those, because our Nashville Next goal is growth and preservation. And this one really, codify our intent to preserve trees and open space and remain natural, untouched. So I think we are going into really great direction. And I would like to thank, Council Lady Henderson for leading that effort and, co-council members. This is, literally listening to the voice from the community and codifying in a very, very complicated way. But to me, I kind of like to do some little mathematics. It's not that complicated, and I think you achieve really beautifully. So, for example, I was, looking at the RS20 10-acre lots. So, 15%, 20% deduction because as a road and, so forth. So maximum yield will be 17.4. So, let's say 17 units. So, if you reduce, for example, preserve 25% of the area, natural space, and it will reduce the 25% of the lot area. So it will become equivalent of 15,000 square foot. So, but still 50, and then if we preserve, really good 50%. So it will reduce the lot size to 10,000 square foot. And 10,000 square foot, divide by, so that will, so 10,000, so 50%, so it will reduce the developable area to 5 acres. So that is equivalent of 174,240 square foot. So divide by 10,000 square foot. It still gives you 17 units in 10,000 square foot. So that will give really great development tool for the development community. And at the same time, it will give 50% of wonderful preserved lot. So that is excellent. So in that, if we further reduce, it's like, let's say, so enormously 80% preserve. So that will be reduce the lot size to 4,000 square foot. And then, divide 4,000 square foot, that will give you still 17 units. So I think that's a really great tool. I am so excited with the mathematics. And then, if those areas happen to be in T3, neighborhood maintenance area, we can still apply those, compatibility and so forth. So we can have cohesive development. We are not going to squeeze smaller lot, a lot in incompatible. But if it's in T3 neighborhood evolving area, that will be a great tool. So I think that really balances preservation and development. So I am really excited about this, proposal, and I am so thankful for the hardworking staff. So I do understand, because it's a little, complicated to understand how it will work in reality. So in that sense, I do understand, other commissioner maybe want to defer one meeting and then really, understand it. But to me, it's like a really great tool. And especially 18B, moving the tree requirement under 1728. So 1728 is environmental and operation performance standard. So that used to be hillside development standard, floodplains, development standard, problem solve standards, and protection of cedar grade standard. In that, we are adding protection of tree standard. So that speaks volume, how we are intentionally want to preserve those, wonderful trees and natural area. So this is a great, testament for how serious and intentional for the preservation is, but at the same time, promoting the growth. So I just want to thank you. I am so enthusiastic about this.
Thank you, Commissioner. Councilman?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Councilmember Henderson for all your work on this. And I know that Councilmember Henderson does the difficult work of stakeholder engagement, and the passions sometimes run high in those meetings, and appreciate your willingness to stick through that on some of these really complicated pieces of legislation. I'm really excited about this as a tool. I think Councilmember John's my colleague, did a great job with the math, but I think this appears to be density neutral, is my sense, in that we are not saying that you can only build half the number of units. It's just that the lot sizes would get a little bit smaller in proportion to the amount that is being preserved. I think the fact that it does require preservation is a good thing. One of the comments that I've heard from community members, pardon me, about the cluster lot subdivision, or sometimes even from SPs, is, well, they're like, well, folks are preserving a part of the land that isn't useful anyway, or isn't desirable for some reason. And so I think this is a big step forward. The tree protection piece is definitely a good thing. I think the main thing for me, I have a little bit of hesitation, which I think that Vice Chair Farr referenced, is that what are we doing for the lots that don't happen to have these constraints? What I am concerned about is that we're going to take land that in some cases could be rural land. It's very nice land that neighbors kind of like that, and sort of giving them no option other than subdividing it into relatively regularly rectangular lots across the site, when something a little bit more thoughtful, could be beneficial. And I just worry that we're kind of removing that option from those unencumbered sites unless someone chooses to do an SP or something like that. So that is I think is my concern there. But otherwise, this seems to be density neutral, which is important. I do understand the concerns from some neighbors about, rural tending to be a low-density area. It tends to be that way. Director Kempf is accurate that sometimes the base zoning entitlements that are currently there are what allows the density to begin with at a certain level. And if the community feels that a lower density in general is what is desired, then that would require rezoning, basically. But even those options can be a little bit limited if the property owner does not wish to have their entitlements reduced. So, but given that, I mean, I think this is a great tool. I'm pretty comfortable moving forward. I do have a little bit of concern that I share about removing an option that seems to be a good one for unencumbered lots, but otherwise, I appreciate the work of the staff on this tool that requires that when we do set aside land, that it is thoughtfully preserved and managed and undisturbed.
Thank you, Councilman. Commissioner Henley?
Thank you, Chair. I won't echo a lot of my previous commissioners. I definitely agree with all of their comments thus far. I don't think I've heard anything that I disagree with. I made a couple notes during the presentation. I think one of the ones that definitely stood out to me was it is a flat-out replacement, and I think that's something that we've talked about a little bit. And the effective date was one of the notes that I made, and I think there's a concern that, and I understand the timeliness of getting it approved, but, let's say if we did vote yay, right, today, less than 90 days for the community to respond to this change, I think is not something that is acceptable. I think that's a pretty significant burden on the community to do that. And I think, honestly, as an institution, we place a lot of burden on ourselves to be able to respond to inquiries, folks trying to push things through, or at least see what other options are out there. And that's a reality that I don't think we're at, but I think that's something we should be mindful of as we go forward, is making sure there's enough time for the community to respond and understand this change in text. The other thing that I wanted to say, too, is, I do feel like I'm a big fan of where we're going, right? I started with something that seemed a little bit dark or dim on this, but I'm really excited because I think, we've heard time and time again about the way that we're allowing our natural environment to be impacted by our growth. And I think what you all have done and the work you've done, it started before I got here, but definitely have been made aware of and supported, and have heard from constituents of people that are asking me, how are we going to do a better job? And I think we're getting there. I think there's a part or a piece that's missing if we're replacing the cluster lot option, but I think what you have presented, I fully support in terms of a way of managing growth in areas that do have some sensitive areas and areas that we want to preserve. I'll pass the mic.
Commissioner Haynes?
So, Councilor Henderson, thank you as always for all your hard work on this. I don't think we need a deferral, personally. Staff's been working in this for a year. Council Lady Henderson's been working on this for a year. Developers have participated in this. Quite honestly, speaking about my industry, developers tend to find a way to come to this body and let their opinions be known. And we've heard it on whether it was Airbnb or a lot of cases, they let it be known, and we have nobody here. We have 191 for it. That's amazing. And we're at a crossroads in Nashville. We've got to protect the fabric of our city. Part of that fabric is Lower Broadway. Part of that fabric is the rolling hills and the beautiful natural resources that we have. I think this is well written, well drafted. The fact that more developers are not opposing it tells me the staff has done a really good job of meeting a middle ground. So I'm for this and prepared to vote yes tonight.
Thank you. Chairman?
It's not a whole lot I can add to the discussion, listening to my fellow commissioners who've brought the topics to the table that needed to be. And I'm like our commissioner here that, I think it is completely detailed well enough to go forward. And I'm not really that supportive of a deferral, because the only thing we would be deferring, and I think that the challenge then would be to the staff to understand what the commissioners were asking in a deferral and possibly what the public is asking in a deferral. And I don't think that's sufficient time to do that. So I would support a motion to approve.
Well, it's time for a motion, Mr. Chairman. Do you want to make a motion? Is that an official motion?
That's an official motion to approve the staff recommendation for 18A.
All right. Second. Well, hold on one second. The director has a question.
Sorry. Do you think I can press?
Yeah.
Scared of our technology. So I wanted to ask just a clarification. If I heard from Commissioner Henley, did I understand you to say you had some concerns about the enactment date?
Correct. I don't know if that materially impacts any of the support that's being brought forward. I just think that June, that time frame, I understand wanting it to be approved quickly based on what's on council's plate. But in terms of an effective or enactment date, is that something that all parties are comfortable with sliding back?
Okay. Okay.
So we're still on discussion, and that is a concern.
Chair, I have one request.
Johnson.
I have no problem with motion to approve.
Wait one second. Hold on. Before we have a motion. Let's make sure we get a second. Is there a second?
You got a second.
Okay. Second. All right. Perfect. All right. So discussion.
So,
Commissioner Johnson, what's your question?
My request was the bill currently written has a little inconsistency of the language, such as common open space versus natural open space. I would like to ask staff to go over and once again, and then making sure everything is what staff intended. So cross-check and make minor modification or housekeeping modification.
So that's a housekeeping modification that the council lady can, that the staff and the council lady can add and then if it becomes material, it comes back to us. So our process is if there's a comma out of place or the wrong word and it doesn't make a material change, the council lady can fix that in her amendment. Any other questions, Vice Chair?
I guess I just want to at least put it on the table or as part of the record then that I really want to think about what that alternative tool is, or the secondary tool is, and have some kind of a timeline for that, because I do think that we don't want to end up in a situation where we have a year where certain properties can't be, I just think it could end up being that could be very complicating as well for us. But I don't think that I want to leave the existing cluster lot in place, but I would like to think there is a timeline for that alternative tool.
So while we're talking about it, Vice Chair, Director Kemp, what is your foreseeable timeline?
So the staff has, I'm going to talk out loud for a second. We have generally sketched out what that might look like. I'd like to recommend a meeting with the community, or several work sessions with the community stakeholders who've been working with us, and also probably a presentation to the commission and a work session. So I think all told, very, very aggressively, that would be 2.5 months. Is that reasonable? 2 months? Sean, Molly?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, I think we need to move quickly, so.
Yeah, I think we have the outlines. I think making sure that we have an opportunity to get stakeholder feedback on that. And again, the kind of feedback that will help us understand the impacts of it so we can make sure that it's doing what we intend for it to do would be important. So I would say not faster than 2.5, but certainly we could proceed with all urgency.
And so, as we're still in discussion, Commissioner Tibbs, did you have a question?
I do, because
Okay,
I
go
had
ahead.
kind of catered my comments to a deferral, and maybe we're going a different direction. So I did want to say that I'm definitely very much in favor. I do feel like a visual would help, this architect's brain, but as far as, I love the trees, how that was all worded, and I definitely feel like this is way better. Well, it's definitely better. Maybe I shouldn't say way. I think this is definitely going to be a helpful tool, and, we always had that. And I'm concerned about getting rid of the cluster, so that time frame is good to understand as well. That chart, that still is very helpful for me. And if we do go forward without a deferral, I'm definitely very comfortable with moving forward. I think it's going to be easier, actually, after as we start using this, in the future. So I felt like I should go on record since I went, totally for deferral earlier.
So we're still in discussion on the deferral, and
on the approval.
Excuse me. On the approval and not the deferral. And so I really appreciate the team working on this and all the comments. And I think it was important. The team decided to put the alternate information in there for a reason, so that the development community knows that we're moving in a direction for this second item. And I know there's some concern by commissioners, but that was I think it was important to note our intent, and so of that second proposal. Because, if you all think about it, if we allow it for a lot that doesn't allow open green space or recreational facilities or, whatever that looks like, or greenways, or making the development much better based on the open space, greenways, public transit, all of those things that we talk about often, I think that's an important thing, and I think that came out in our discussion. So, all right. Any other discussion on the approval motion, on the motion to approve?
Sorry, I do have
Commissioner Henley?
I asked about the date for enactment, but I don't know if that's been formally addressed. I would like for that to be formally addressed.
Yeah, Shauna, can you address, what is the...
So the staff recommendation was for an effective date of June 15th, assuming that this keeps to the schedule that it's on. That date was, we generally, when we're going to have legislation that changes how applications would be submitted, we try to align it with a filing deadline so that we are not catching people in the betweens of filing deadlines where they might have totally prepared an application, but it hasn't come due to be turned in. So that was kind of the first logical filing deadline that allowed time for people who had already begun preparation of proposals to get them in for some training and staff and the public on those requirements. I think a different effective date would certainly be something that the commission could recommend or consider. We do want to match it to a filing deadline just for logistics sanity with our front counter staff, but we're happy to hear what you guys are discussing in terms of when you might consider having it become effective. We can give you some guidance on what the closest filing deadline is to that, and then of course that would be the recommendation going to council for them to consider.
Commissioner
Jeff, for Commissioner Haynes or Commissioner Henley, can you weigh in on that a little bit? If someone's in the middle of acquiring property, expecting that this is an option, they're not going to be able to have an application in by June 15th.
So I would ask staff, how many current applications are you all even talking about with folks right now where this would have an impact? Because people would already be talking about this, I think, Commissioner Henley. If they're not talking to you about it, then I don't think the June 15th date is too early.
Commissioner Haynes, I think Lisa has give her a second she potentially give her 5 seconds. Or, oh, was that 5 minutes? So,
Chair,
while she looks that up, Sean.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I did want to clarify. The cases that are under review will proceed under the standards that they're here under. I think what Lisa's trying to ascertain is if we've had pre-application conversations with applicants, so.
Good clarification. And Commissioner Henley, do you have any other questions while we wait on the pre-application numbers? No? Okay.
I'll show my hand. I think the motion as approved and what likely we'll be voting on, my concern is that there is no alternative, right? It is one thing that everybody, one thing that people have prepared for, trained for, have enlisted professional services for, goes away, right? And so here's a new thing that has to be absorbed by the community, and then there's also no perfunctory option that replaces what was there. We intend for that to be here. It sounds like it's something that almost may align with this enactment date if we're talking about having 2.5 months. I'm just wondering if it's worth pushing back to a new deadline that aligns with what could be policy that allows all of this to go forward at once.
Well, and I think, yes, and that is legitimate. And so, Director, do you have a comment on that?
Can I hear from the commission? So again, this is a complex topic, so it's hard to unpack, but I'm sensing general support for the conservation development proposal as defined. For all the other properties that are less constrained, is there interest in keeping the cluster lot in place while we do this additional work? Am I hearing? No. Okay. So I think I can only, I'm not sensing support for that, so I think I can only move forward as quickly as is reasonable to get feedback and come, and so I guess what I'm hearing you say is defer it until you can bring it all together as a package. Oh, sorry.
Absolutely not.
Tell me what you're saying. Okay.
My formal comments are about an enactment date, potentially moving, and I would prefer that enactment date guidance be given from staff based on when they think they could say, we plan to bring a second tool. That second tool might be ready by X.
I see.
What's that next enactment date?
Forgive me, I misunderstood you.
No,
so if we move the enactment date to the date where I generally think we could bring the second set of recommendations forward, is that what I'm hearing?
From me, yes. I saw a lot of other people maybe shaking their head no, but that's what I'm speaking about.
So an enactment
Okay, hold
date
on.
of like September.
Sorry,
Vice Chair,
like that.
we're losing control of the meeting. So one at a time, and we're not in a debate. We're still in discussion. Vice Chair.
Oh, I was just going to say something. It sounds like something like maybe an enactment date in September might give us some time to have some discussions on the secondary piece.
Yeah, and you know, enactment dates, it's after we would pass it here, they'd pass it at the council, and then the enactment date would be later. I mean, it's something to consider. Lisa, do you have some factual information for us?
I would call it an estimate.
Oh, okay. An estimate. Yes. It wouldn't be the first time we have estimated things.
I would call it an estimate, and you know that I like to be very precise, and so I'm doing a guess. So we have a pre-application request sheet where we sort of keep up with all of the pre-application requests that come into land development, and it's got around 800 entries in it at this point. I'm guessing that there are somewhere between 15 and 20 concept plans that we have at some point in the past 6 to 7 months have consulted on. What I haven't been able to do in this amount of time is see how many of those have actually already been submitted and are under review, because I would have to do some sort of complicated matching of parcel numbers to applications to see if they've actually been submitted. But I can say that we've probably had around 15 to 20 in the past 6 or 7 months that we've consulted on.
To further clarify that, of those 15 to 20 concept plans, we don't know how many are cluster lot or not.
I would hazard the guess to say that 98% of those are probably cluster. The majority of what we see for a concept plan, except for like ones that are 5 lots on an existing road, are cluster.
Thank you, Lisa. So there is evidence that potentially, what Commissioner Henley is saying is that could be a tool that the development community uses quite a bit. But the motion that we have, we would have to be, Commissioner Haynes, more discussion?
Well, interestingly, if we do have 15 to 20 pre-apps with concept plans, and everyone has known about this, we haven't heard from those applications or those concept plans. And we all know this subject has caused us major angst. We've all worried about this cluster lot and these hillsides majorly on all these cases. And we don't have James Weaver here. We don't have Tom White here. We don't have those folks here saying this enactment date needs to slide. And we don't have any of those applicants with concept plans saying, hey, this enactment date needs to slide. I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but we would be hearing from those folks if this date were causing heartburn.
Well, and Council, unfortunately, the public hearing is closed. We did have a developer speak. He spoke for it, but with a caveat as well of getting rid of that particular option altogether and wondering how the second option was. So we had one developer here. So, but we still are on the motion and the second under the discussion of an approval. Is there any other discussion? Commissioner Hanley?
And I plan to end this quickly with a friendly motion that can be rejected. I just want to say I sympathize with small-scale developers who are the applicants for these types of projects. And two, I think about the homes that could go away, right? If they're not here, they're unaware, because that does happen. They're confused or they just don't know, right? They're just oblivious. But I will say this, I make a friendly motion, and I don't know the exact date, that the enactment date is slid back to the most appropriately defined.
Well, unfortunately,
that's not possible.
Hold on, Chairman. That's an out of order motion. You're out of order. So you can't make a motion. You can discuss it, and we'd have to have
a friendly amendment to the motion is not possible during discussion.
As I listen to all of the wonderful discussion, I think we're getting mixed up in terms of date. One, I'm saying that to me, a 1 month deferral to flush out some of the issues that are still being heard from the commissioners in that period of time, not set a date for the implementation. That's not what my motion is about. So my motion should not carry forward 2.5 months from now. It should only carry that we're going to hear clarification on the points that we've raised here tonight.
So here's the status, Chairman. Commissioner Henley is requesting to make the effective date later in September. Is that correct, Commissioner Henley? But that we would still approve, it would be a condition of the...
But that's not part of the discussion.
Well,
I think that if at a point that Commissioner Henley wants to make sure is a valid date for these things to actually be implemented, then that's part of the discussion that we have with the staff and everyone else during the deferral. And at the next meeting, we ought to say, okay, this thing is finally flushed. We support it. We have a recommendation as a body that the implementation date be September.
Oh, may I clarify?
Yeah, Director.
So may I just clarify then, and perhaps I misunderstood, am I hearing you say you would support a one-meeting deferral to flush this out, or am I hearing you say you don't? I just want to make sure I understood.
My motion is I do support a one meeting deferral.
Okay.
I thought
hold on, everybody. We are lost control of the meeting. So hold on. Everybody calm down and say we'll flush this out. So, Chairman, your original motion was to approve staff's recommendation.
Correct.
So
on 18A.
Yes, and you would have to withdraw your motion and make a new motion to defer one meeting, if you want to defer one meeting.
Why?
Well, because if we approve it, then it's not going to come back next meeting. So your original motion was to approve it and let it go forward. Then that's not, I don't think that was.
Pointing out some redundancy there that doesn't.
Yes, Chairman. So what I would ask for you to do is if.
I will correct my.
Well, you'll have to withdraw your motion, your original. Okay. The
new motion.
And the second needs to be withdrawn too.
Withdrawn.
All right. And so
My
the second.
original motion was to defer. The intent of my first motion was to defer for one meeting.
Okay, that's a proper motion. So we are, is there a second to defer one meeting? Is there a second to defer?
You guys just convinced me.
So we're back into regular discussion, and there's a motion on the table, but we need a second to discuss.
I thought, don't we?
Whatever. Vice Chair? Well, hold on. Wait 1 second.
Can I second so I can ask a question?
Well, hold on. Let's ask our attorney if we're.
Well, he can withdraw the motion, but you currently have a motion that needs a second. So.
Yes, we do. So we have a new motion. There was a withdrawn motion and withdrawn second. So we're on regular discussion. There has been another motion that the chairman made, which is to defer one meeting. And so we need a second to discuss it.
Well, I have a question.
Well, before that would be part of the discussion.
Where we are right now?
So somebody needs to second.
I will second his motion for a one meeting deferral,
All right.
But my question is,
Proper.
can we, if we had gone back to the last motion to approve, could we have approved it with a later effective date as one of the conditions?
Exactly.
Could we have added that as a condition?
So,
for a
Vice
later
Chair,
effective
my
date?
analysis of that, Mr. Tibbs, would be yes, we could have. But the chairman changed his motion to a one meeting deferral.
Right, so, okay.
And at the next meeting, we could make that the deferral date later.
Or the effective date, not deferral.
Effective date.
The effective date.
Yes.
Yeah, we could have even voted on his amendment and voted, okay, yeah, we'll accept that amendment too, but anyway.
So if we think it should be approved tonight, but we want to add a condition for a different effective date, then we could disapprove the motion for the deferral, and I will make a motion to approve with the condition of a later effective date.
Yes, we could do that. Yes, we could do that. But so we're still on the discussion of a one meeting deferral. And so, look, commissioners, we try to work this out through vote. So if it doesn't get approved, then we have to get another motion. So if one meeting deferral is not approved, then we'll need another motion.
Let me add something real quickly.
Commissioner Haynes.
In deference to Commissioner Henley, if during the one meeting deferral, staff could work on this additional language for this additional scenario and come up with a better timeline, and we come up with an extended effective date and try to marry those two together during the one meeting deferral, then I think I would support a one meeting deferral if that gives y'all enough time to do that. Because I respect Commissioner Henley and his concern that people might get caught in a trap, both for the effective date and for not having anything at all when the cluster lot goes away. So, but I don't want to put a burden on the staff to accomplish this in 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Director?
You've put some very helpful guidance into the record. Should the commission choose to pursue a deferral, we will look at the enactment date, given the discussion here, and make sure that that we have better visibility about when we're going to bring the follow-up for the non-constrained properties. Clearly, that's something that you're looking for more information on, and we will do that. And if for some reason we're not in a good position, we'll work with the council member. There's a bill that's been introduced, and so we are on a schedule, and we'll work with her. And
I think
you have my commitment.
Wait, hold on, Commissioner Haynes, hold on. Commissioner Tibbs has a question.
Rewinding then back to where I was before. If we're going to defer it then, could we have like a case study then to show what the changes would be then, if we're going to do that?
Director?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
yes,
Commissioner Johnson?
By deferring one meeting, does it affect the council movement, public hearing, and so forth? I just want to make sure the council is timely, because we don't want council to caught up on the budget hearing. So just wanted to make sure timeline is okay.
Sean?
Commissioner, at this juncture, the bill is tracking for public hearing at the first council meeting in April. I believe that's April 5th. Your next Planning Commission meeting is not until April 14th. So if you were to defer one meeting, the public hearing at council would happen in the interim, although you would still have your Planning Commission meeting on the 14th in advance of the final reading at council. Now, typically, I think we will try to work with council members so that you can complete your recommendations before the public hearing. And that would be, us asking the council member if she would be willing to entertain a change to the schedule for the public hearing at council, to move that back probably to the May council public hearing, which would give you time to act in the interim.
And so, council member, would you be willing to allow it for a May? Yeah, come on up.
Yes, I typically like on a bill of this complexity to make sure we have the recommendation of the commission. So if you all were to recommend a one meeting deferral, I would then defer at council so that the bill would track for the May public hearing. But if I may, on that point of kind of shifting and getting the information in the context of the deferral and what will transpire within that month, I guess what I did want to ask, particular to Commissioner Henley's concern, or to make him aware, is that Title 17 bills are amendable all the way through third reading on the council side. So the research that might need to be done about the 15 to 20 and where they are, but to Commissioner Haynes's point, they've been engaged through the stakeholder, and they're not here, aside from one, Mr. Hostetler. So if staff were to determine, based on what the pre-meetings, if I need to move the effective date or amend the legislation on the council side to make sure nobody gets caught in between, you have my word and commitment that I would do so on the council side. So I didn't want commissioners to feel like they needed to defer here to get clarity on that before. I mean, I think certainly the clarity around, the examples that might be done or so forth. But as mentioned earlier, staff has, in creating this policy, already done quite a bit of that work. It informed the staff report. So while they don't have something here today, Commissioner Tibbs, to just show you, it's my impression from the conversations we've had and the research that work has been done,
yes,
but it's the tool. So in the context of deferring and would I move it, yes, Chair Adkins, I would be willing to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, so we have a motion to defer one meeting with clear intent from the director and a second. Any other discussion on the one meeting deferral? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. One no. Ayes have it, and it's deferred one meeting. And sorry that was so confusing, but we finally got there. Thank you, commissioners. All right, so now we are on to
B, 18B.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're on 18B? Sean, keep me straight.
Well, Chair, I might just recommend or request on behalf of staff, these are companion bills, so it's best to keep them together so that we can make sure that they're not getting out of sync.
That's a good point. So 18A was deferred one meeting, and the staff is requesting that this be keep it online. So is there a motion? There's a motion and a second to defer 18B one meeting as well. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it, and 18B is deferred one meeting as well. So now we are on to, that concludes our public hearing. And I do want to thank the commissioners for being patient with all of us. Parliamentary procedure can get a little confusing, and I appreciate y'all's help with that. So other business, we're on H, other business, and anything historic, anything on historic?
No report tonight.
Nope, okay. Parks, Jeff?
We had a very important ceremony yesterday at Centennial Park. We put a plaque up next to the Art Center, the former pool, to commemorate Kwame Lillard and Matthew Walker and what happened 60 years ago. It was a very great, very powerful ceremony. So if you haven't had a chance to read about it in the paper this morning, I encourage you to do so.
Thank you, Commissioner Haynes. Executive Committee report. The Vice Chair and I appreciate everybody coming to the meeting this week. It's good to see everyone twice in 1 week. Vice Chair, is there anything else on Executive Committee?
No, I thought we heard a good data point suggestion just now in that about the number of units. I forgot to comment on that.
That's right.
Since we discussed the housing issues at our work session, I thought the comment that we should have, total units approved is a good idea for our housing work.
Okay. Good deal. Director's report. Anything, Director? Nope.
Just thanks for coming to the work session and for your time and comments today.
All right. Legislative update, Councilman?
Nothing at this time. Thank you.
All right. So next meeting is April 14th, and that concludes all of our business. Is there a motion to adjourn? We're adjourned.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.